In this video, we will look at the 12 types of illegal participation fouls. Participation is any act or action by a player or non-player that has an influence on the play. In 2025, illegal participation penalties have all been unified in their enforcement. They are all 15-yard penalties enforced from the basic spot. The most common violation of illegal participation is a team that has 12 players at the snap. Typically, we want to catch this before the snap and get the illegal substitution penalty instead. But sometimes we might not be able to get our count in time. This foul is simultaneous with the snap, and therefore the basic spot is the previous spot. No player is allowed to intentionally go out of bounds and then participate. This includes coming back onto the field, touching the ball intentionally, or influencing the play in another way. This doesn't include any player forced to go out of bounds by an opponent, or a Team B or R player who goes out of bounds accidentally. If a player goes out but does not come back on or affect the play in any way, then we don't have a foul. As we have covered before, Team A or K has a stricter requirement when it comes to going out of bounds. They are not allowed to go out of bounds unintentionally unless they are blocked out by an opponent. If that is the case, they must return as soon as possible. Unlike other levels of football, they don't have to touch the football in order to commit a foul. If they participate after going out, they have committed illegal participation. A substitute does not become a player until he is on his side of the neutral zone. We have already discussed that if the sub doesn't make it to his side of the neutral zone at the snap, we would have a foul for illegal substitution. However, if this player then participates, we have illegal participation instead of the illegal substitution. Again, if this player does anything to obstruct an opponent, he is considered to have participated. This includes an offensive player drawing coverage by a defensive player. If this person stops and does nothing to affect the play, it is still an illegal substitution at the least. If a non-player, which includes a replaced player, substitute, coach, athletic trainer, or any other sideline personnel, is on the field and affects the play, we have illegal participation. This includes hindering an opponent in any way or touches the ball. If they don't affect the play, we should still have at least a sideline warning or interference, since it's obvious they aren't in their team box. A substitute must be on the field before the snap. Just like a substitute not reaching his side of the neutral zone, we have at least a substitution infraction at the least. If he simply comes on but doesn't affect the play, it can remain an illegal substitution foul. However, if he participates, then we have illegal participation. It doesn't matter the number of players on the field at the snap. So even if this person would be the 11th player, we would still have a foul. If an official calls a timeout for an apparent injury, the player must sit out at least one play. This includes for having an open wound or blood on a uniform. A team cannot take a timeout to buy the player back in. The only exception to this is if it occurs near the end of the half and the intermission occurs. While football is full of deception, there are certain things that are expressly prohibited. This includes having a replaced player or substitute doing something at the snap or right before it that causes the other team to be confused as to who's actually going to be a player during the next down. An example of this would be a substitute who comes just onto the field and then runs a route. Remember that he must be between the 9-yard marks for this to be legal. There's no time restrictions for how long he has to be on the field, though. Another example would be a replaced player delaying his return to the sideline on purpose to confuse the opponent. While in high school, a team can break a huddle with 12 people, one of these players needs to be returned immediately to the sideline within the 3 seconds of being replaced. This could look like a player who is heading to the sideline, then stops temporarily and looks like he's trying to line up and then continues on. When dealing with this foul, we want to be sure this is an attempt to deceive the opponent and not an accident caused by confusion. If we can use an illegal substitution penalty or illegal formation, we're better off. However, a repeated attempt at this would rise to illegal participation. Once a player is ejected, he is required to remain in his team box. If he attempts to come back, and play, it's illegal participation. You could also have a foul for unsportsmanlike conduct on the head coach if he tries to do this on purpose. If a runner loses his helmet, the play is immediately dead. However, if another player on the field loses his helmet, he cannot continue to participate in the play beyond his immediate action. Even if he puts his helmet back, he's still ineligible to continue. If possible, use preventive officiating to tell the player he can't keep going. This can help avoid this foul since most players don't know they can't continue to participate once their helmet comes off. It might be really hard to hear this during a live play, but it's still worth trying to avoid having to make a call. Similar to an injured player, if a player is removed for not wearing equipment properly, he must sit out one play. He cannot be brought back in with a timeout. And as with an injured player, if the halftime intermission or break occurs between the end of regulation and overtime, they don't have to miss a play. Finally, a player cannot lay on the ground to attempt to deceive an opponent. It doesn't matter what he's doing on the ground, as long as it's done to try to confuse the opponent.